Morgan Housel once said something that stopped me cold. He said, "Financial success is not a hard science. It's a soft skill, where how you behave is more important than what you know." Now think about that for a second. The guy who wrote one of the best-selling finance books of all time, a book that has sold over 10 million copies worldwide, is telling you that getting rich has almost nothing to do with what you know about money. It has everything to do with how you behave. And that single idea explains why 99% of people will never build real wealth. Not because they are stupid, not because they do not earn enough, but because their psychology is working against them in ways they cannot even see. In his book, The Psychology of Money, Housel opens with a story that perfectly captures this truth. It is the story of two men. The first man is Ronald Reed. Ronald Reed was a janitor. He fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years. Then he swept floors at a J.C. Penney for another 17 years. He bought a two-bedroom house for $12,000 when he was 38 and lived there for the rest of his life. He was widowed at 50 and never remarried. His main hobby was chopping firewood. Nobody thought twice about Ronald Reed. When he died in 2014, at the age of 92, he made international headlines. Because Ronald Reed, the janitor, the gas station attendant, the guy nobody noticed, had a net worth of over $8 million. He left $2 million to his stepkids and more than $6 million to his local hospital and library. Where did the money come from? No lottery, no inheritance, no secret. He simply saved what little he could and invested it in blue-chip stocks. And then he waited. For decades. As tiny savings compounded into a fortune. Now here is the second man. His name is Richard Fuscone. Richard was a Harvard-educated executive at Merrill Lynch. He had an MBA. He was so successful in finance that he retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. He lived in a massive mansion with an indoor swimming pool and an elevator. Guests talked about the thrill of dining and dancing on a see-through floor above the pool. 5 months before Ronald Reed left his fortune to charity, Richard Fuscone's mansion was sold in a foreclosure auction for 75% less than it was worth. He was bankrupt. Housel writes, Ronald Reed was patient. Richard Fuscone was greedy. That's all it took to eclipse the massive education and experience gap between the two. A janitor with no education outperformed a Harvard-trained finance executive. Not because he was smarter, not because he had better information, but because he behaved differently with money. That is the psychology of money in action. And in this video, we are going to break down the hidden psychological traps that keep most people broke, and the mental shifts that separate those who build lasting wealth from those who never will. Stay until the end, because the last point might change the way you think about money forever. Here's the first trap, and it is the one that catches almost everyone. We think we know what wealth looks like. We see someone driving a brand new BMW and we think, that person is rich. We see someone wearing an expensive watch and we think, they must be doing well. We see a big house in a nice neighborhood and we assume the people inside have it all figured out. But Morgan Housel makes a devastating distinction that most people never grasp. He says, spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. There is a critical difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is a current income. Someone who earns $300,000 a year is rich. But if they spend $295,000 of it on a lifestyle designed to impress other people, they are not wealthy. They are one bad month away from financial disaster. They are Richard Fuscone. Wealth, on the other hand, is hidden. Housel puts it perfectly. Wealth is the nice cars not purchased, the diamonds not bought, the watches not worn. Wealth is financial assets that haven't yet been converted into the stuff you see. Think about that. Wealth is literally invisible. You cannot see it, you cannot photograph it, you cannot post it on Instagram. The person sitting next to you on the bus, wearing old sneakers, might have $2 million in index funds. The person driving a brand new Range Rover might be 2 months behind on their payments. And Housel makes another observation that is almost painful in its honesty. He says, when most people say they want to be a millionaire, what they actually mean is they'd like to spend $1 million. And that is literally the opposite of being a millionaire. This is why 99% of people stay broke. They are chasing the appearance of wealth instead of actual wealth. Every dollar you spend on looking rich is a dollar that is no longer working for you. It is no longer compounding. It is no longer building your future. Ronald Reed understood this instinctively. He drove a used car. He wore simple clothes. He lived in a small house. Nobody knew he was wealthy because he did not need anyone to know. He was not playing the game of impressing strangers. He was playing the game of building freedom, and he won. Our entire society is designed to push you in the opposite direction. Social media shows you other people's spending, never their savings. Advertising exists to make you feel incomplete without the product. Even the people around you judge your success by what they can see. But Housel argues the opposite. The only way to be wealthy is to not spend the money that you do have. It sounds simple. It is the hardest thing in the world. Now here is where things get really interesting. Most people believe that the path to wealth is earning more money. Get a raise, get a better job, start a side hustle. And yes, income matters. But Housel argues that it is far less important than most people think. He writes, building wealth has little to do with your income or investment returns, and lots to do with your savings rate. This is counterintuitive for most people. We are trained to think that the solution to financial problems is always more money. But Housel points out something obvious that somehow everyone misses. You can build wealth without a high income, but you cannot build wealth without a high savings rate. It is mathematically impossible. Think about it. A doctor earning $400,000 a year who spends $390,000 is saving $10,000 a year. A teacher earning $60,000 who spends $40,000 is saving $20,000 a year. Who is actually building wealth faster? The teacher, by a factor of 2. And here is the really powerful part. The $20,000 invested consistently over 30 years at an average market return of around 7% turns into something extraordinary. We are talking about over $1.5 million from a teacher's salary, not from stock picking, not from crypto, not from some complicated strategy, just consistent saving and patience. But the reason most people fail at this is not mathematical. It is psychological. Housel identifies the real enemy. He writes, saving money is the gap between your ego and your income. Your ego. That is the word he uses. Because as your income rises, your ego rises with it. You get that promotion, and you feel like you deserve a nicer car. You get that bonus, and suddenly your apartment feels too small. You start earning more, and you start comparing yourself to people who earn even more. Your lifestyle inflates to match your income. And the gap, the only thing that actually builds wealth, stays the same, or shrinks. This is called lifestyle creep, and it is the silent killer of wealth. It is why people who earn $200,000 a year often feel just as financially stressed as people who earn $50,000. The money goes up, but so does the spending. The gap never grows. The treadmill never stops. Housel makes a fascinating comparison here. He says, think about the 1970s energy crisis. The whole world was panicking about running out of oil. And yes, finding new sources of oil was important. But you know what actually solved the problem? Efficiency. Cars that used less fuel, better insulation in homes, conservation. The world learned to need less, and that was more powerful than finding more. The same principle applies to your money. You can spend your entire career chasing a higher income, or you can learn to need less. And the beautiful thing about needing less is that it is 100% in your control. You cannot control the stock market, you cannot control the economy, but you can control how much you spend. The 1% who build real wealth are the ones who resist lifestyle creep. They let their income grow while keeping their lifestyle relatively flat. And that growing gap is what creates freedom. Now let us talk about the force that makes all of this possible, and the one that almost everyone underestimates. Morgan Housel tells a story that perfectly illustrates why most people stay broke, even when they know the right things to do. He talks about Warren Buffett. Now, everyone knows Buffett is one of the richest people in the world. But here is a fact that almost nobody thinks about. Warren Buffett's net worth is around $100 billion. Of that, roughly $97 billion came after his 65th birthday. Let me say that again. 97% of Warren Buffett's wealth was created after most people retire. Not because he became a better investor in his 60s. He started investing when he was 10 years old. By the time he was 30, he had $1 million. By 50, he had about $250 million. Impressive, right? But tiny compared to what came next. The exponential explosion happened in the last 3 decades of his life. That is compounding. And Housel says something brilliant about it. The key to building wealth is not finding the best investment. It is giving average returns an extraordinary amount of time to work. That is the entire secret. Not the best stock, not the perfect timing, not some complicated algorithm, just average returns plus lots and lots of time. But here is why this is so hard psychologically. Compounding is not intuitive. Our brains are wired to think linearly. We think if we invest $10,000 and get 10% return, we will have $11,000 next year, $12,000 the year after. It feels slow and boring. But that is not how compounding works. It is exponential. It starts slow, painfully slow. For years, it feels like nothing is happening, and then it explodes. The problem is that 99% of people quit during the slow part. They get impatient, they pull their money out, they chase something faster, something more exciting. And in doing so, they destroy the one thing that was actually going to make them wealthy: time. Think about it. Ronald Reed, the janitor, did not have a genius stock strategy. He bought basic blue-chip stocks and held them for decades. He did not sell during crashes. He did not chase the next hot thing. He just kept holding. And tiny savings from a janitor's salary turned into $8 million. We live in a world of instant gratification. Everything around us is designed to give us what we want right now. Same-day delivery, streaming on demand, instant messages. Our brains have been rewired to expect immediate results. Compound interest asks you to do the opposite. It asks you to wait, to be patient, to do nothing for years while your money slowly grows. And for most people, that is psychologically unbearable. So they sell, they trade, they check their portfolio every day, they chase the next meme stock, and they stay broke. Not because they are stupid, but because their psychology cannot handle the boredom of getting rich slowly. Now let us talk about luck and risk, because this is something most people get completely wrong. Housel tells another powerful story. In 1968, there were about 303 million high school-age people in the world. About 18 million of them lived in the United States. About 270,000 of them lived in Washington State. And only about 300 of them attended Lakeside School, a private school in Seattle. One of those 300 students was Bill Gates. Lakeside School happened to be one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer in 1968. A teacher named Bill Dougal had used the school's fundraising to buy a teletype machine that connected to a mainframe computer. Bill Gates got to sit in front of that computer as a 13-year-old, at a time when most universities did not even have one. Gates himself acknowledged this. He told his school's graduating class, "If there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft." But here is the part of the story people rarely hear. Gates had a close friend at Lakeside named Kent Evans. Kent was just as talented with computers, just as passionate, just as brilliant. Kent Evans would have almost certainly been involved in whatever Bill Gates went on to build. But Kent Evans died in a mountaineering accident before he finished high school. The odds of a teenager being killed in a mountaineering accident are roughly 1 in a million. The odds of attending a high school with a computer in 1968 were also roughly 1 in a million. Bill Gates experienced 1 in a million luck. Kent Evans experienced 1 in a million risk. Housel's point is not that success is random. It is that luck and risk are siblings, as he puts it. They are both real forces that shape outcomes in ways we cannot predict or control. And the problem is that we almost never account for this. When someone succeeds, we study their strategy and assume we can copy it. When someone fails, we blame their decisions. But the truth is always messier than that. This matters for your wealth because it changes how you should think about your financial plan. Instead of trying to find the perfect strategy, focus on building a plan that survives bad luck. Have a margin of safety. Do not put all your money in one investment. Do not take risks you cannot afford. Housel writes, "The most important part of every plan is planning on your plan not going according to plan." That is not pessimism. It is realism. And the people who build lasting wealth are the ones who accept that things will go wrong and plan for it anyway. Now we get to what might be the most important idea in Housel's entire body of work. And it is the idea that separates the 1% from everyone else. Most people think the purpose of money is to buy things: a house, a car, vacations, experiences. And there is nothing wrong with any of that. But Housel argues that if that is your primary reason for wanting money, you will never have enough of it, because there is always a bigger house, a nicer car, a more exotic vacation. He writes, "The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today." Control over your time. That is what money is really for. Not the car, not the watch, not the house. The ability to decide what you do with your days, who you spend time with, and how you spend your hours. Housel doubles down on this. He says, money's greatest intrinsic value, and this can't be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time. And then he points to something fascinating. Americans are richer than ever. Average incomes have risen dramatically over the past 50 years. We have bigger houses, faster cars, more technology than any generation in history. But studies consistently show that Americans are not any happier. Why? Because while incomes went up, control over time went down. We work longer hours. We are always reachable. We feel constantly behind. We traded the one thing money is actually good for: control over our time. For bigger houses we are never in, and nicer cars we sit in during our commute to a job we cannot quit. Housel's own father was an emergency room doctor. It was a high-paying, prestigious job. But after 2 decades of grueling day and night shifts, of watching people die, of never being able to relax, his father retired early, not because he was rich enough, but because he needed his time back. That experience shaped Housel's entire philosophy. Freedom is the ability to downshift, to choose, to say no. Meanwhile, the person who earns less but spends far less, who has built a cushion of savings and investments, has something far more valuable. Options. The option to quit a bad job. The option to take a risk on a new idea. The option to spend a Tuesday afternoon with their kids instead of in a conference room. And the tragedy is that most people trade this, the most valuable thing money can buy, for stuff that depreciates the moment they buy it. A car loses value the second you drive it off the lot. But the freedom that comes from financial independence only grows over time. There is one final psychological trap that Housel identifies, and it might be the most destructive of all. He writes, "The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving." Here is what he means. You set a goal. Let us say you want to earn $100,000 a year. You work hard. You get there. And for about 2 weeks, it feels amazing. Then you look around and notice that your neighbor earns $150,000. Your college friend just bought a bigger house. That influencer online seems to be living a better life. So the goalpost moves. Now you need $150,000 to feel successful. Then $200,000. Then $300,000. It never stops. Housel illustrates this with a powerful story. He writes about a conversation between two writers at a party hosted by a billionaire hedge fund manager. The writer Kurt Vonnegut tells his friend Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22, that their host made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from his most famous novel over its entire history. And Heller responds, yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough. Enough. It is such a simple word, but it might be the most powerful concept in all of personal finance. Housel explains, if expectations rise with results, there is no logic in striving for more because you'll feel the same after putting in after effort. Happiness equals results minus expectations. This is the formula that explains why millionaires can feel broke, why celebrities go bankrupt, why lottery winners end up worse off than before. It is not about the money, it is about the psychology. When your expectations always rise to match your results, you are on a treadmill that never stops. And Housel takes it further with a warning that should terrify anyone chasing more for the sake of the more. He tells the story of Rajat Gupta, who was the CEO of McKinsey, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world. Gupta had a net worth of over $100 million. He had everything, but he wanted to be a billionaire. So he engaged in insider trading, got caught, and went to prison. He risked everything he had and needed for something he did not have and did not need. Housel writes, there is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. That sentence alone could save people from financial ruin. How many people have destroyed their savings chasing a stock tip? How many have leveraged their house to invest in something risky? How many have risked a stable, comfortable life for the chance at something marginally better? The answer is almost everyone. Because our psychology pushes us to always want more. Social comparison is the fuel, and until you learn to override that instinct, you will never feel wealthy, no matter how much money you have. The people who build lasting wealth, real, generational, life-changing wealth, are the ones who master this one skill, knowing when enough is enough. Not because they lack ambition, but because they understand that the game of constantly wanting more is a game you can never win. So let us bring it all in together. Why do 99% of people stay broke? Not because they do not earn enough, not because they are not smart enough, not because they do not have access to the right information. It is because of 6 psychological traps that Morgan Housel has spent his career studying. 1. They confuse looking rich with being wealthy. They spend money to signal status instead of building real financial security. Remember, wealth is invisible. 2. They focus on income instead of their savings rate. They chase higher salaries while letting lifestyle creep destroy the gap between earning and spending. Remember, the gap is everything. 3. They underestimate compounding. They know it exists, but they are too impatient to let it work. They quit during the slow years and miss the explosion. Remember, 97% of Buffett's wealth came after 65. 4. They ignore the role of luck and risk. They take enormous risks without a margin of safety, assuming things will go according to plan. Remember, plan for the plan to not go according to plan. 5. They use money to buy things instead of freedom. They trade the most valuable asset in the world, control over their time, for depreciating possessions. Remember, time is the highest dividend. 6. They never learn when enough is enough. The goalpost keeps moving, and no amount of money ever feels like enough. Remember, happiness equals results minus expectations. Morgan Housel did not write The Psychology of Money to teach you how to pick stocks or time the market. He wrote it to show you that the biggest obstacle to wealth is not outside of you. It is inside of you. It is your behavior, your emotions, your psychology. And the beautiful thing about that is, you can change it. You cannot control the stock market. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control whether you get lucky or unlucky. But you can control how you behave with money. And that, according to Housel, is more powerful than any investment strategy ever created. Ronald Read proved it. A janitor with no education, no connections, no advantages, built an $8 million fortune. Not because he was special, but because he mastered the psychology of money. He was patient. He was humble. He saved consistently. He let compounding do its work. And he knew when he had enough. You can do the same. If this video made you think differently about money, hit that subscribe button. We publish new videos every week exploring the deepest ideas in wealth psychology and financial wisdom. And if you want to go deeper into Morgan Housel's ideas, watch this next video where we break down the one money rule that changes everything after 30.